In Israel, the month of Cheshvan is often referred to as this time period called Achrei Chagim, literally after the holidays. It's a time after the semi-frenzied month of Tishrei, where we're meant to get into some sort of sense of routine, of normalcy after the holidays. And for many, it's a kickoff time for the well-intended New Year's resolutions that we might have made in the previous month's time, in Elul and Tishrei, when we've been a bit more soul-searching and thinking about our goals and our personal journeys. And we all know that this idea of starting a new habit is very challenging. It's hard to start and it's even harder to maintain. And there have been many, many books and articles done on this topic. One of the well-known ones by James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits, where he writes, "It is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress." In other words, it's the idea of recognizing taking action along a longer period of time. It's a long journey. And no matter how seemingly small or insignificant a step might be, it's better than taking no steps at all. And what's interesting is that we have this phrase where we can seemingly belittle something and say, it's just a drop in the bucket. And the message when we're trying to start a new habit is actually that one drop is worth so much. Just do one tiny little change, and that will lead you towards a path of much greater change and lasting change. And this idea of a drop is actually alluded to in our month of Cheshvan, because we know the sages, Chachamim, call the month Mar Cheshvan. And the word Mar is found in a pasuk in Yeshayahu, where it says, Hen goyim kamar midli. And this word Mar is understood to mean a drop, like a drop of water. And so this month, when we are trying to start new patterns and create tiny changes, we recognize that even a tiny drop is really significant. There's another book by author B.J. Fall called Tiny Habits, where he also understands this and explains this concept of starting really small, hence the title, focusing on a tiny, consistent action rather than aiming for these rapid, big transformations. And both interesting books and worth reading. But in this month of Cheshvan, we also read the Parsha of Lech Lecha, where we know we are meant to go on our own journeys. It's meant to hopefully inspire us on our own personal journeys of growth, creating new, improved realities for ourselves, one tiny habit at a time. And one way of creating new habits is by recognizing what old patterns we already have in place, perhaps seeing where they come from and learn to assess them in a healthy way in order to then move forward and create new ones. And we can look at the pasuk in Breshit of Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetcha u'mibeit avicha in such a fashion. When Hashem says this to Avraham, he's also saying to us, right, this message of go forth from your native land, me'artzecha. Let's assess what are some cultural habits that we have, what hobbies fill our spare time, what has influenced our choices on fashion, music, art, books, movies, and shows. What are we ingesting? What culture are we choosing? This is the artziyut, right? This world of gashmiut, of the physicality around us. What's influencing us? And go forth, lech lecha, from your place of birth, mimoladitcha. You are born with certain DNA. You do have a certain nature. But how much of our habits, how many of our choices do we chalk up to, that's just my nature. I'm by nature lazy. I'm by nature aggressive, angry. Whatever habit, whatever behavior patterns you have, how much of it have we told ourselves that's just the way I am? It's immutable. It's part of my DNA. I was born like that and it's unchangeable. Let's reassess that. And thirdly, right, lech lecha, from your father's house, mi beit avicha. What patterns have we picked up, knowingly or unknowingly, from the families that we grew up in? We naturally follow family scripts that we've observed or experienced in our childhood homes, often without even paying attention to them. Sometimes we can act in fear of repeating mistakes of previous generations. Can we take note of where we're replicating or avoiding emulating such behaviors and models that we've had before us? And then we can assess with an open mind, is it helping us? Is it benefiting us or not? Once we can do this lech lecha, where we're leaving from, then we can move forward and take a step. Rav Eyal Vered writes in his book on the Parsha, based on the Sfat Emet, he writes that this idea of lech lecha is about halicha, right? About walking. And this idea of walking is an act of emunah, he says, an act of faith, of trust. Because when we're walking, we have to lift up our legs, and there's a sense of imbalance. We're removing ourselves from the stability of the earth, from the ground, and we have to be unstable for a bit and trust in the next step forward. And he even goes so far as to say that the great enemy of our progress, hu haragel, our habits. So it really fits in with our theme in the month of Mar Cheshvan, that we change by one drop at a time, by one step at a time. We can move forward and we can create a new path for ourselves. On that note, this idea of being on the path, baderech, is a theme, a message that we get from Rechad Imenu, whose Yortzeit Yom Ptirata is on the Yud Aleph Cheshvan, on the 11th of Cheshvan. And we know she was buried baderech. It tells us in 2 different psukim in Bereshit that she's buried on the way. This reminds us, however cliched it might sound, that while the destination is incredibly important, it's the journey, one step at a time, that truly matters. So I give us all a bracha b'ezrat Hashem in this tkufa achrei chagim, in this time period after the holidays, in this month of Cheshvan, that we can create new tiny habits for ourselves, one step at a time, one drop at a time. And remember that even one small drop can truly be a remarkable thing.